The night was quiet. And then Russia's billion-dollar oil empire started burning. In a single night, Ukraine didn't just launch a drone strike, it rewrote the rules of economic warfare, and Moscow may never fully recover. Before we get into the strike itself, you need to understand one thing. Russia doesn't run on ideology, it runs on oil money. As of 2024, hydrocarbons, oil, gas, and refined petroleum account for roughly 30% of Russia's entire federal budget revenue. Some estimates put wartime dependency even higher. Every tank that rolls into Ukraine, every missile that launches, every soldier that gets paid, it flows from oil export dollars. Russia's primary oil export infrastructure runs through a handful of critical choke points. The biggest ones are on the Black Sea coast, ports like Novorossiysk, Kavkaz, and Tups. These aren't just industrial facilities. They are the financial arteries of Putin's war machine. Novorossiysk alone handles over 140 million tons of cargo per year. It is Russia's single largest port on the Black Sea. Lose it, even partially, and you don't just lose oil shipments. You lose leverage, you lose cash flow, and you lose the war's financial oxygen supply. Ukraine knew this. And Ukraine had a plan. This didn't happen overnight. This was years in the making. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, Ukraine's military drone program was severely outmatched. Russia had numbers. Russia had the Su-34 jets, the Kh-101 cruise missiles, the S-400 air defense systems. But Ukraine did something no one expected. They didn't try to match Russia weapon for weapon. They went asymmetric, they went cheap, they went smart, and they went deep. Ukraine developed two weapons that would change this war permanently. First, the Magura V5, a naval surface drone, roughly the size of a jet ski, capable of carrying up to 300 kilograms of explosives, rides just above the waterline, nearly invisible to radar. It has already sunk or damaged multiple Russian warships, including the landing ship Caesar Kunikov in February 2024. Second, Ukraine's long-range strike drones, variants like the UJ-22 airborne and domestically produced one-way attack drones, is capable of striking targets over 1,000 kilometers from the launch point. These aren't just loitering munitions. These are precision kamikaze platforms, GPS-guided, flying low under radar coverage, hitting coordinates with terrifying accuracy. By late 2023 and into 2024, Ukraine had already proven the concept. They'd hit Russian refineries in Saratov, Ryazan, and Krasnodar. Each strike was a message. Each fire was a proof of concept. Then came the night that changed everything. It's 11 p.m., somewhere in southern Ukraine. Exact location, classified Ukrainian. Operators sit behind laptop screens and encrypted comms equipment. The order comes down. The swarm is released. Not one drone. 5. Dozens. Intelligence reports suggest the strike package included both aerial drones, likely modified UJ-22s and Beaver-class variants, and Magura V5 naval surface drones entering the Black Sea simultaneously. A two-vector attack designed to overwhelm Russian coastal defense systems. This is called a saturation attack. The principle is brutal in its simplicity. You launch enough platforms from enough directions that even a well-prepared defense cannot intercept everything. Russia's Panzer S-1 and Torum 2 systems guarding the port have a finite number of missiles. Ukraine calculated exactly how many they needed to overwhelm that ceiling. The first drones reached their targets. Tank Farm Number 1, direct hit. A 50,000-ton crude oil storage tank detonates. Fireball is visible from 40 kilometers away. Within seconds, the thermal cascade begins. Heat from the first tank ignites vapors in adjacent tanks, and it is catastrophic. Russian emergency responders scramble. While Russia's attention turns upward toward the aerial attack, the Magura V5 units are cutting through the harbor. But several have already slipped through. They melt infrastructure. The extreme heat of a petroleum fire burning at over 1,000 degrees Celsius warps pipelines, destroys pumping equipment, and fuses loading mechanisms into useless metal sculpture. The physical infrastructure has to be replaced, and the satellite images tell the story before any government can spin it. Commercial satellite provider Maxar Technologies captures thermal imagery showing the scale of destruction. The fires are still burning. Loading berth infrastructure on the southern pier, completely non-functional. Rough initial damage estimates. Global oil markets react immediately. Traders scramble to recalculate Russian supply forecasts. Meanwhile, in Moscow, the Kremlin issues a terse three-line statement. It does not mention the word drone. It does not acknowledge the damage. Novorossiysk, operating at 40% reduced capacity, is projected to cost Russia an estimated $500 million to $800 million per month in lost export revenue, depending on how long repairs take. The Baltic seaports, Primorsk, Ust-Luga, the Arctic route. But here's the brutal math. Redirecting 40% of Black Sea capacity to alternative routes isn't possible in the short term. Period. By week 2, Russia's military response is predictable and vicious. Moscow launches a retaliatory cruise missile strike against Ukrainian port infrastructure on the Danube. This port is the lifeline Ukraine has been using to export its own grain and receive weapon shipments. 3 Shat-136 drones hit warehouses near Ismail. Ukrainian grain export logistics are disrupted for 72 hours. But here's the asymmetry that is slowly killing Russia's strategy. A single Ukrainian naval drone costs roughly $250,000. A single Russian Kh-101 cruise missile, the weapon Russia uses for retaliation, costs approximately $13 million. Russia is spending $52 for every $1 Ukraine spends in this exchange. At that ratio, this isn't just a military conflict. It's an economic war of attrition. And Ukraine is winning the math. The geopolitical shockwaves arrive on schedule. India and China, Russia's 2 largest shadow oil customers, begin quietly renegotiating supply contracts. Indian refiners, already paying discounted war price for Russian crude, start hedging toward Middle Eastern and African suppliers, not because of politics, because of reliability. You cannot build a shadow oil export economy if your ports keep burning. Buyers need certainty. Buyers need consistency. And Ukraine is systematically destroying Russia's ability to provide either. Turkey, meanwhile, faces its own dilemma. The Bosphorus Strait, controlled by Ankara, is the funnel through which all Black Sea oil trade must pass. Turkey has been playing both sides since 2022, profiting enormously from acting as a transit and re-export hub for Russian commodities. As Black Sea export volumes drop, Turkish transit fee revenue drops with it. President Erdogan quietly places a call to Kyiv. The content of that call is not disclosed. But the timing says everything. Make no mistake, this strike wasn't improvised. This is doctrine. Ukraine's military leadership, with significant advisory input from Western intelligence partners, has been executing a deliberate campaign. They are targeting what strategists call economic warfighting nodes, the infrastructure that funds Russia's ability to sustain long-term conflict. The strategy has 3 pillars. Pillar 1, disrupt revenue. Every oil facility destroyed, every refinery put offline, every export terminal damaged reduces the cash flowing into Russia's military budget. With oil at $80 per barrel, and Russia already selling at a $15 discount to attract buyers, revenue reduction is cumulative and compounding. Pillar 2, degrade logistics. Fuel doesn't just generate export revenue. Russia's own military burns enormous quantities of diesel and aviation fuel. As domestic refinery capacity gets destroyed, Ukraine has hit at least 15 major refinery targets since 2023. Russia faces the paradox of sitting on vast oil reserves, while struggling to produce enough refined fuel for its own advancing forces. Pillar 3, exhaust response capacity. Every Pantsir missile fired at a $250,000 Ukrainian drone is a Pantsir missile that cannot defend Moscow. Every S-400 battery repositioned to protect an oil port is an S-400 battery that isn't covering the front line. Ukraine is forcing Russia to choose defend the economy or defend the battlefield. That is an impossible choice. Putin is not panicking, but Putin is calculating. Russia's potential responses range from manageable to catastrophic, and none of them are good. Option A, accelerated retaliation against Ukrainian infrastructure. Russia can, and likely will, intensify strikes on Ukrainian power grids, water infrastructure, and transport hubs this winter. This causes immense civilian suffering, but it does not restore Russia's oil ports. It is punishment, not strategy. Option B, deploy more naval assets to protect Black Sea ports. The problem here is devastating irony. The Russian Black Sea fleet has already been so severely mauled by Ukrainian drone attacks, losing the flagship Moskva and multiple other vessels, that meaningful naval protection of port infrastructure may simply be beyond Russia's current capability in this theater. Option C, negotiate. No. No evidence this is on the table. But every month of sustained infrastructure losses brings the economic pressure higher. Option D, escalate horizontally. The most dangerous option, Russia expanding conflict to pressure NATO's eastern flank, attempting to create a crisis that forces the West to pressure Ukraine into ceasefire. High risk, unpredictable consequences. But not impossible for a leadership increasingly backed into an economic corner. Now let's close with the numbers that matter. Russia is losing an estimated $500 million to $800 million per month in Black Sea export revenue alone. Approximately 40% of its Black Sea oil export throughput was wiped out in a single night. Ukraine has struck more than 15 Russian refineries and oil facilities since 2023. A Ukrainian drone cost $250,000. A Russian retaliatory missile cost $13 million. Hydrocarbons fund 30% of Russia's entire federal budget. Novorossiysk was processing 140 million tons of cargo annually before the strike. And the number of major Ukrainian port facilities that Russia has successfully put permanently offline, 0. The math is brutal, and it only moves in one direction. Ukraine cannot match Russia in manpower. Ukraine cannot match Russia in artillery shells. But Ukraine has discovered something more powerful than either. It can make the war too expensive to sustain. Every barrel of oil that doesn't reach a tanker ship is a tank that doesn't get built. Every refinery that burns for a week is a missile salvo that never launches. Every port that goes dark for a month is a battalion that doesn't get paid. This is what modern economic warfare looks like. It's not sanctions alone, not diplomacy alone, but precision, asymmetric, sustained infrastructure destruction, executed with drones that cost less than a luxury car. Targeting the financial nervous system of the largest country on earth, Russia built an empire on oil. Ukraine is burning it one port at a time. Now here's the question that keeps military analysts awake at night. How many more strikes can Russia absorb before the economic damage begins, directly dictating the outcome on the battlefield? Are we already past the tipping point, where the fires burning in Novorossiysk are already deciding battles that haven't been fought yet in eastern Ukraine? And here's the deeper question. If Ukraine can destroy 40% of Russia's oil export capacity overnight with drones that cost $250,000 each, what happens when they have twice as many drones? Drop your analysis in the comments below. Do you think these strikes will force Russia toward the negotiating table, or push Putin toward an even more dangerous escalation? If this breakdown gave you something new to think about, hit that like button. Subscribe for weekly deep dives, and share this with someone who needs to understand what's actually happening in this war. Because the story the headlines tell you is a fraction of what's really going on. We'll see you in the next one.